All right, so this is our panel discussion, Transformative Talks panel discussion on music and healing with some amazing guest panelists, Jonathan Goldman and Emily Curnutte. Oh gosh, I hate that this does this.
No, that's okay.
I forgot that it on the timer, but
oh, that's okay. I will. So Emily Curnutte is MS, MM, MTBC, and we'll go back. Sorry, is a board certified music therapist.
I'm gonna just do it on
That's
this screen
perfect.
so it doesn't do the timer.
Perfect. Professional singer, songwriter, and voice teacher. Emily has worked for Mount Sinai Hospital, South Beach Psychiatric Center, Hudson Valley Hospice, and the League School, specializing in medical, mental health, palliative, hospice, and NICU care. She has worked with individuals with a wide range of diagnoses, from developmental disabilities to oppositional defiant disorder and more. Emily has presented her research thesis, How Singing Helps Us Heal. Love it so much. Alongside the AMTA Research Committee, and is passionate about helping both singers and self-proclaimed non-singers alike find their true, authentic voice. Her voice students have established careers on and off of Broadway and in TV and film. Her own vocal studies with the industry's top professionals have allowed her to create a method that combines music therapy and voice work to increase confidence, original artistry, and full range of expression with her clients. She's a graduate of SUNY New Paltz as an MS in music therapy, and Manhattan School of Music with an MM in classical voice. And her website is emilycornutte.com. Thank you so much for being here, Emily.
Of course, thank you.
All right, and then we have Jonathan Goldman. Jonathan Goldman, MA, is an international authority and pioneer in the field of sound healing. He is author of numerous books, including Healing Sounds, The 7 Secrets of Sound Healing, and his latest, the best-selling The Humming Effect, co-authored with his wife, Andy Goldman, which won the 2018 Gold Visionary Award for Health Books. Jonathan is director of the Sound Healers Association and president of Spirit Music Incorporated in Boulder, Colorado, right down the road from us.
Yeah.
A Grammy nominee, he has created over 25 best-selling award-winning recordings, including Chakra Chants, The Divine Name with Greg Braden, and Reiki Chants. Jonathan has been named as one of Watkins Mind, Body, Spirit magazine's 100 most spiritually influential living people. And his website is www.healingsounds.com. And for more information on us, we are Stephanie and Graham Anduri, and this is Sing for Your Lives. You can learn more about us at singforyourlives.com. So with that out of the way, let's dive into it. I think we want to send some questions to you all, but I'm going to start a little out of order. We want to know, how does sound healing differ from music therapy? Because they kind of, our conversation today is called Music and Healing, but we're really going to be talking about a lot more than just music. So let's go ahead. Jonathan, would you like to start us off, since you are the sound healer here, but you're a musician as well, as we can see from your room.
And I have actually worked in the music therapy realms as well. I'm a graduate of Lesley University, and I did a lot of undergrad work at there. So music therapy is wonderful, and I've lectured a lot, and I've had actually dear friends who are like the major forerunners in the field. So I know a bit about it, and I know a bit about sound healing as well. Sometimes they can be the same. Sometimes they can be a little different. I often used to say that sound healing, and this is not correct, these are just delineations, sound healing oftentimes focuses on using sound or single tone frequencies on usually the body or the brain. And music therapy is a little bit more behavior oriented. But then again, you have to understand that a friend of mine, Dr. Charles Eagle, I don't know if you knew of him, Emily, but he was head of the music therapy, and it doesn't matter. He would often talk about the harmonic nature of the universe and how music therapy was really getting into the genre or field of sound healing. So I have to say that on one level, they're one and the same. This gets into another question, which is, what is the difference between sound and music? But I'm going to throw this over to Emily right now.
I actually agree 100% with what you just said with your definition. And I was thinking about it last night because I felt very unqualified to answer this question because I personally have never experienced a sound healing ritual or anything in that realm. I know the instruments used, some of them. I feel very inept to use them. I feel like I want more training in that area, and I would love to. I'm immediately wrote your book, The Humming Effect, down. I'm going to buy it immediately. But I know of the sound healing capabilities of the human voice. So I agree with your definition. I think that they can be very similar depending on the need of the individual, or they can be extremely different. But I do agree that music therapy, I think, tends to have a behavioral component and a need for maybe more active participation from the client. Perhaps I could throw that in.
Nice. We could keep going, or we could deal with the next
Yeah.
question, because there's some of these questions are so expansive. I
Right.
know that Emily and I could talk for an hour just on one
Easily.
of them with you
I
guys.
know.
Right. Well, I think like what you're both saying, there is a lot of crossover between the two. One of the things, we had a pretty amazing experience a number of years ago. We were at a party. A friend was having a graduation party, and her uncle, I believe, was there. He had pretty advanced Parkinson's disease. He had been a singer-songwriter in his previous life, but he was having trouble. Like, after, he would kind of disappear for a while, and then we'd say, where did I forget what his name was, but where did he go? We kind of haven't seen him for a while. He would be out in the front lawn just locked. He couldn't move. His Parkinson's was that bad that he couldn't move his body. But somebody handed him a guitar, and he started playing and singing these songs that he had written years before. And it was like the tremors were gone.
Completely.
He had complete coordination with his fingers, with his voice. And so it was, at that level, it was not so much a behavioral thing. It was transforming the way that his body was able to function.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the sound, it was the music he was
I mean,
creating.
perhaps you all have seen the whole Tony Bennett thing for his last concert.
Yes.
Where he's got advanced Alzheimer's, and yet he gets out there and, hey folks, here I am, and and there it is. It just takes over. And so it's an amazing phenomena. And if that isn't healing, I don't know what is.
Exactly. Exactly. So that leads us well into the next question. How can music heal us physically, mentally, and emotionally? Jonathan, let's start with you.
Okay, this is a huge one, because on a level, I've been very, very into the realm of using music as a healing modality for a long time. And what seems to be most interesting is, in terms of the healing realm, science and medicine is mostly looking at the ability of music to affect heart rate, respiration, brain waves, all the physiological phenomena. So if you perceive simply of somebody getting to a state of relaxation, stress reduction, how much of the imbalances of our planet today are based upon being stressed out and being tense and whatnot, then, how extraordinary is that? And then there is, all right, so just like that suggests that I've sort of created a delineation of two different ways that sound, and so all music is sound. I don't know that all sound is music. That's a whole nother discussion. But sound affects us two ways. It goes into our ear, goes into our brain, affects our nervous system, our heart rate, respiration, brain waves, blood pressure, and this is called psychoacoustics. And then there's a phenomena called vibroacoustics. This is where sound goes into the physical body, affecting us on a deep cellular level, affecting us down to the DNA. And I'm just going to give you a real quick quote from the New York Times, February 8th, 1988, if you want to reference it. It was talking about ultrasound, but it could easily be applied to sound. Sound, shaped into dazzling tool, can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. So if you can rearrange molecular structure, then there is a level of healing that is possible that we can only wonder about.
Right. Right. And we see this in the studies of Hans Jenny and of Chladni and of even Emoto. There are so many scientists who are looking at this, the way that sound affects physical form. And because we are, and physical form is sort of a challenging term, because we're talking about everything at the molecular level, everything at the atomic level or subatomic level is just vibration. And so whether or not there's actual physical form is a whole other can of worms, kind of, but
And
it's all vibration.
I'd like to just real quick refer you all, if you don't know it, to the work of Alfred Tomatis. Okay, French otolaryngologist, basically worked with opera singers, basically the author of a brilliant book called The Conscious Ear. And it's an amazing book. I'm not going to go into him much, except to suggest that he passed from this planet. And unfortunately, if people aren't in your face right now, waving a flag, nobody notices them. He passed about 10, 15 years, but he was brilliant. He was considered the Einstein of the ear. And I'll just give you the Tomatis effect. This is the voice can only duplicate those harmonics, those sounds that the ear can basically experience. So if you can't hear it, if you're having difficulty, a lot of people don't realize that somebody with a vocal problem, whether they're real nasal or like this, that's actually, according to Tomatis with his audiograms and stuff like that, an aspect of the whole phenomena of listening. Because if you can't hear it, then you can't create it.
That makes sense.
Absolutely.
Would you mind putting that name into the chat so that we can spell it right when we're looking for it?
Can I give it to you? Because I don't know how to do that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I will put it into the chat while you're telling us.
Tomatis. Alfred Tomatis.
Great. Alfred
Cool.
Tomatis. Okay, wonderful.
Perfect.
Emily, let's extend that question to you. How does it heal us?
Well, I can only speak to kind of what I've witnessed in the ability to witness like actual newborn babies in the NICU respond with lowered heart rate, with lowered blood pressure, with more regulated heartbeats, with the ability to finally fall asleep, because the first thing that we are able to hear, our hearing is the first thing that develops in our mother's womb. The first thing you hear is the sounds of your mother's womb. So you have the whooshing of embryonic fluids, you have the heartbeat that you're able to hear, and then eventually you can hear voices. And so I would work with people all the time. And if the babies are in there for an extended period of time, people would be so shocked because the baby would respond to dad's voice as well. And I would say, well, of course, if you were around talking or singing or, making any kind of noise, the baby knows your voice specifically. So it would be sound interventions mixed with music. We had this, it's art called RBL training, where we would use an ocean disc, and you would essentially, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, Jonathan, you would essentially duplicate the mother's embryonic fluid, and it would put the babies right to sleep. If they were fussing, if they'd just undergone a major procedure, babies go to sleep because you're recreating the environment that they're comfortable in. So it makes total sense that we as adults hear a song that reminds you of your first love in high school, and then you're transported back to this yearbook of music that so influences our lives. So I think that exactly what you said, Jonathan, too, like physically, you can talk all about stimulating brain cell activity, lowering blood pressure, boosting your immune system, all these things that we've researched, but we can really speak to it as humans, because I have yet to meet someone who hasn't been impacted by some kind of music in their life at least once.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that we all acknowledge the sort of spiritual component to sound and to music making, because I think that's something that as pedagogues, we really neglect. And as professional singers, we really neglect to think about the spiritual implications of singing and just the deep healing that can take place. And what you said about NICU was so fascinating. I remember after our first child was born, and I read about this later, actually, Eckhart Tolle talked about the idea of sound only existing if it's encased in silence, right? Because otherwise it's just sort of a wall of noise and we can't discern one noise from another. And so I remember thinking how strange it must be for our child to come out of the womb having heard just a wall of noise his entire existence. And then all of a sudden, every noise is separate and every noise is sort of encased in some sort of silence. And so how jarring that must have been to have to kind of separate things out.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think one of the things that we really try to do with our Sing for Your Lives is to kind of highlight that, there's, I think, a lot of folks that get either scared off by that idea of the spiritual aspect of music and of just sound in general, and saying like, well, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist, or if I can't observe it, I can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So I'm just gonna shut that out. And really what there's so much of this, the music therapy, of sound healing, of just the phenomenon of sound in general, that it's really, it is physics. There's so much of it that is, it's basic physics when you get down to what this means to have vibrations in training other vibrations, that we can measure and observe all that stuff. But then you can only read so much about that. You can only do so much, research in a book about that kind of stuff. There's a whole different level of experiential understanding, like you're talking about. You'd never met anybody that hasn't had a deep impact from music at some level. There's that experiential part of it that goes beyond, you can't adequately describe it. You can't adequately measure that or put that into words. You can only really know what that is once you have felt it. And I think that's really where the magic, so to speak, lies. So when you have that experience, that transformational kind of experience, and it's like, whoa, there's something here that I've got to learn more about. I've got to dig into this some more, because it really does change who you are at a deep level. And I feel, what we feel, why we do what we do, is that it empowers people to kind of do something important with their lives, that they can have an impact on the world.
Yeah. Jonathan, did you have something?
I just like to suggest that with regard to this, that we have a tendency of indeed differentiating, here, in the Western states and maybe in modern times, but in a lot of different traditions. The musicians were the magicians, were the healers by nature. It was just the process of experience, if you like. And indeed, if you can read all you want, but unless you've experienced it, it's not real, bottom line. And when it's real, then nobody can take that away from you. And then it is profound. And we need to also realize that if it's real for us, doesn't mean that somebody else is going to have the same experience. And so, we're all unique vibratory beings in terms of music, sound, and whatnot. We all like different things and have to honor that in people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another place where the classical world, and I'm in it, we are in it, right? The classical world really falls short of the idea that all music, that all sound is valid sound, and that it doesn't have to follow a specific path to move people. It's such a difficult place to be. We hear this all the time, like the classical musicians are the really good musicians, and everybody else sort of falls short of this mark of being a classical musician, and you're absolutely right too about most ancient faiths, not just ancient, current too, have some sort of chant, have some sort of vocalization, some sort of music that's incorporated into services, into worship, into the experience of that spirituality, because it brings us deeper. It's such a foundational part of who we are, such an essential part of our spirits. Yeah.
You look at India, and they've got not only rags, mantras, etc., and it's it's an amazing phenomena. And what's really important, and this is really not to get too focused on any one tradition as being the correct tradition. And what part of my purpose is to bring a lot of the information that is known there and is practiced there, and it's now happening here. Yoga is on every street corner right now, and it wasn't when I first began. And I believe that you're going to find that sound and music as a therapeutic and healing modality is also going to be taking this place. We need to understand some of the, if you like, physics of sound, the physics of music, what happens. But at the same time, we also need to understand, here's an important one that is not hit, it's hit the quantum level, but it hasn't hit the straight medical level yet, but it's the concept of intentionality. I want to open this up because this is so mandatory in terms of anybody who's making music, particularly if you're using the voice or playing classical music or whatnot is to get, this is just a concept. So I'm going to throw that at you. Is this appropriate to talk about? Because
Absolutely.
it's so important.
Absolutely.
Please,
We teach a whole
yes.
class on this. So
Yep.
yes.
Yes.
Well, totally you can. I have a dear friend who basically was stimulated by one of my books, Healing Sounds, and I have a formula in it, which is frequency plus intent equals healing. And that really just means the sound you create coupled with the energy or the consciousness that you put creates the outcome. And she's now been doing this on a scientific level, researching level, because she's a professor of music and all this stuff. But it's, there are phenomena where you can basically, with the intention and a little breath, put yourself into a state of what they call coherence, heart-brain coherence. And once that happens, if you start playing, the music, the notes may be the same, but the energy and the feeling is totally different. And this includes whether you're singing, humming, or hitting a pan.
This is exactly what we do. This is exactly, you just said so much about what we teach. We're doing experiments on heart-brain coherence with singing. This is all so in line. And one of the things we discuss in our intention class is, they're coming out with all new technologies now where people who have been paralyzed, who are unable to speak, are able to communicate because thought has vibration. And so these machines are picking up on the vibration of these thoughts. Well, if thoughts have vibration and everything is vibration, then our intentions, our thought intentions are entraining, the world around us. And so there's, oh my gosh, there's so much here. It's brilliant.
The idea is that what we call, we talked about this idea of soul resonance that we have. Then it's exactly that. It's the sound that you make. It's the vocal resonance, or if you have an instrument, the sonic resonance that you're creating, coupled with the, we kind of have a trifecta of it: intellectual intention, mental intention, but also the emotional intention. And so I'm sure you've been involved with the Heart Math Institute, or you're aware of the Heart Math Institute. You talked about heart-brain coherence. And so what they've been finding, that your heart creates this electromagnetic field that they can detect out away from your body, and that is encoded within that electromagnetic field is your emotional state. And that can be shared with other people without them even realizing it. That entrains other people's emotional states as well.
I just want to suggest a couple quick things, because I know some of the major people who founded Heart Math, and I say some of this stuff and they go, okay, do the research. And I'm just not a research type person, but one of the things I'm going to suggest, first of all, I want to suggest that I like to put things into little sayings so people can get it. Sound is a carrier wave for consciousness.
Yep.
Just sound, the consciousness is being carried by the sound.
Yeah.
But also, if you think about it, sound amplifies heart-brain coherence. As you said, the electromagnetic field becomes 50 to 500, even some say 5,000 times greater.
It's pretty fantastic.
And when you make sound coupled with a heart-brain coherence, what it does is it creates this field that's even greater. If you think about it, the different prayers on our planet are vocalized. It's whispered, chanted, spoken, sung, but they're vocalized. Why? Because sound amplifies and focuses the power of our consciousness and our prayers.
Yes.
We don't have the data to indicate that, but it's true. And you know that the plural of anecdote is data. You experience enough things like that, and it becomes then a
and that's exactly, we're trying, part of our research that we want to do is trying to find the data for that. We're starting to get a little bit of it, but really getting more of that to data to support that idea, because you feel that it's true when you're doing it.
Right. I think the goal for us, and I think probably for both of you in some capacity, is to get the entire world to find peace and presence through making music, and healing through making music. And I just feel like we talk about this all the time. The world is so disconnected in so many different ways. There's so much polarity and so much division. And it seems that the best way for us to dissolve that division is to sing together, is to make music together.
Do you know about World Sound Healing Day?
Yes, we saw
watched
that
your
in some
video
of your
about it,
videos.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're coming on our 20th one, and conceptually, wouldn't it be great? We always thought that if everyone can basically just make a sound encoded with love at the same time, it literally would shift the vibrations. Now we've opened it up to people playing music and doing whatever they want with the intention of love and heart throughout the day. But yeah, what a beautiful concept, because I believe that is, if you want to get biblical, 144,000 people tuned together or whatnot, however many it is, but because it only takes a small amount of people with the right consciousness to make a big change.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Isn't it interesting that you're talking about making sound at the same time? It seems to me that the most common thing is to be silent at the same time. Moments of silence, gathering for these moments of absolute, right, reverence and silence. And I'm not necessarily saying that's wrong, but what could be shifted in our universe if it's not silence, not holding something in, not holding something back, but letting something go altogether?
Yes. We talk
interesting.
about, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
No, it just hit me like a million bricks
I
right
know.
now.
These conversations are so inspiring for that reason. We love these. Thank you so much, both of you.
We were just teaching a class last night, in-person singing class, but we were talking about, what if Congress like sang together to start off a session instead of to like jostle with each other and argue? What if they started with some, singing a patriotic song to create some unity? What would be different about our country?
Totally.
Yeah.
Can I just say real quick that
Of course, please.
I think another little phrase that I have is that silence is the yin to the yang of sound. So they're both really, really important, because a lot of people, once they get either into whatever, whether it's music, singing, sound healing, they become so enamored with the power of sound that they don't know about silence. It took me about 25 years to really understand the power of silence. And it is in the silence that the true shifts and changes occur from our making sound, because we're making sound, we're in a frequency. And then if we shift it and go somewhere else, we need to sit there and basically assimilate and encode this.
Yeah.
So that's, one thought. And I'm going to throw it back to you because I don't want to monopolize this. I apologize.
No,
okay.
please.
Oh
No,
my
it's
gosh,
all
this is
fascinating.
brilliant. Thank you both so much.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Well, so that's, I guess, this sort of that idea of the yin to the yang sort of leads us into the next question here. Can music or sound have a damaging effect? We've been talking how it's, beautiful and positive and healing, but is there a flip side to that coin?
Emily, what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this one. So the main work that I do as a voice teacher, and the main work that I've done as a music therapist and want to continue to do, is healing of artistic wounds that have been initially embedded through someone's own art. So a little bit of background: I went to Opera Conservatory, and the teachers that I had just had this model. And if you did not fit into this model, you were wrong.
Yeah.
And not only were you wrong, but you were not going to continue with a career. And here you'd spent all this money and this time and this love and this sacrifice. And so my final voice lesson, I was actually told that I would never be a professional singer, and that I should just stop doing what I'm doing because it wasn't going to work for me. So that was my final classical voice lesson. And when I left, I said, I'm going to start different voice work then. And I started exploring other options that got me back into my body, that helped me address certain trauma. And my voice became the healing tool, where once it was actually very harmful to me because I was stifling all of this instruction that was actually really harmful. My voice would actually make a clicking noise on a high B. You could hear it would go. My voice was so stifled and so in this little box, and so not releasing its full self to try to be perfect, to try to please other people, and to try to fit into this box, that it was physically rebelling against me.
Sure.
So I think in certain contexts, when you are in a realm that doesn't allow your own full self-expression, music can be harmful.
Absolutely. We talk about the voice as both an instrument and like an expression of essence, an expression of your most fundamental self. And so many people neglect that connection when they're teaching voice. So many people neglect the idea that that to stifle a singing voice in that way. And I mean, I could probably count 100 people just right off the top of my head who have had similar experiences of teachers who've said, this isn't going to work for you, give it up, you know, or just been so abusive in some way about the voice. And we forget that the voice is not just a sound, it's the sonic manifestation of who we are.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
I'm so sorry you had that experience, but I'm so glad that you turned it into such a beautiful story.
Exactly. You have to, you got to use your hurts, you know, and so I'm happy to be able to do that with other people and with my own healing. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Jonathan.
You want to talk about music, voice, or sound? Because if you think about sound, bottom line is if you can rearrange molecular structure, and if you can basically bring down the walls of Jericho with sound, need I say more? There are sonic weapons around. Bottom line, it's a whole different category, but it's something for us to be aware of. And Emily, you're talking about the voice. Yeah, my wife and I have, for the most part, and mind you, I have been working for 40 years with all sorts of really advanced sonic techniques. And one of the things I'm really trying to do now is create such an inclusive type of approach to this that everybody can do it. And that may be another topic a little bit later. But the bottom line is, we deal with humming. And the one thing that we say in terms of humming is simply don't do it. Louder is not better. We think that louder is better, possibly in certain traditions, or like in the opera tradition, you really want to vocalize, but a lot of people really cause strain to themselves.
Yes.
So, are there ways that we can somehow not only adversely affect ourselves, but other people? Think about, by golly, stories of using music to literally psychically attack people. They're playing there, they're booming certain types of music. And I guess, if you really like heavy metal or whatever or not, it's probably not bad, but because we're all not only unique vibratory beings, but different music affects us differently depending upon our age and who we get with. And when I was 15, I still listen to the Beatles a whole lot, but there were certain types of music. Our metabolism is different, our nervous system is different. So when you're 15 or when you're 50 or when you're 75, the type of music that we listen to and our nervous system is different, the sounds that we make. And the one thing I really want to just suggest in terms of is that anybody, whether they're speaking, singing, humming, or whatnot, they can and will be projecting and receiving sound. And you can make it a healing modality if you project the intention of kindness, compassion, and love onto the sound. You can make it something very, very different. Just very, very, it's really so important to be aware that we are these incredible massive beings that can project these vibrational encodements to other people, whether it's our voice or whether it's our tone that we're making, and what are we putting into that tone?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So may I ask, did I interrupt?
I was going to talk about heavy metal a little bit.
Oh, I know. I want you to.
You brought that up.
I want you to. Can I ask one question for you first?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I'm wondering if you believe that the type of music that you're singing or performing or, listening to matters if the intention is, does the intention or the type of music matter more, I guess?
I think the intention does. And I'm going to say that I wrote something a long time ago, and it simply was this, that it's my belief that any music, depending upon the time, the place, and the need of the individual, can be therapeutic. Just as a thought. So, heavy metal or whatnot, hey, who am I to blow against the wind? Who are we to tell somebody they're really having a cosmic experience listening to whomever? And I actually have some good friends who are major heavy metal players. So it's all good. It's all good. Have you ever met any really nasty opera singers or classical musicians who are just totally self-absorbed and whatnot?
Yeah.
And conversely, all the heavy metal people that I personally know are the gentlest, like sweetest, kindest, sensitive souls. And then I, see them in like a pit and I'm like, where's this coming from? It's this amazing energy.
So we had the last month, the panel discussion we did was music and violence, and talking about, can music be a kind of a cure for violence, or can it prevent violence, or does it cause violence? And so this heavy metal thing came up a lot. And I grew up as a metalhead as a teenager. I still listen to it. I was, I played in metal bands for a long time.
He has a flaming guitar tattoo on his arm.
And then I discovered opera, and it went all downhill from there. But the thing that I found is that, yes, I think what we said, the intention really is key there. And heavy metal is very violent. I mean, you can see like the Masaru Emoto experiments where they played like Bach and then they played heavy metal, and the water crystals were these like deformed kind of funky things with heavy metal. But what I found, and what I've talked to a lot of other people who are heavy metal enthusiasts or musicians, is that it's a catharsis. It's a way for you to sublimate all of these really intense, anxiety-ridden negative emotions that you're experiencing. It's an outlet for those. And so it vibrates at that level. It vibrates at this very chaotic, dissonant sort of level, so that you can have a way to outlet those things. And then you leave a heavy metal concert and everybody's like exuberant and just have a huge smile on their face, and you get all this aggression, but then you feel great afterward. And then there are people that they do take it the other way. It's more of an amplification of those vibrations and those emotions, and then they might use that in a negative way. It's really more of a music is a platform, or sound is a platform, and depending on what your intention is, it can go this way or it can go this way. So
I'm just thinking of the Robert Duvall scene in Apocalypse Now, when the I think Wagner's playing and there's coming down the helicopters, and I love the smell of napalm in the morning, which so once again, yes, indeed. How are they using the music? And Graham, I think that you should create a heavy metal opera. It would be a total genre.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, he's talked about that for years.
Beowulf. Beowulf would make a great one.
It really would. It would be fantastic.
Yeah, well, and then you look at in any of the Law and Order or any movie or anything that the bad guy always listens to Don Giovanni. Like that seems to be like constant across the board. They all love Don Giovanni.
I mean, Don Giovanni wasn't like a good guy.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right. So our next question here is there a difference between vocal and instrumental sound or music in regards to healing? Does it make a difference? We've hit on this a little bit already, but is there a distinction to be made there?
Jonathan, what do you think?
Okay, I think it's a great question. My thought is that we have all within us the greatest, and look, I thought I had all these Tibetan bowls and bells right here, but I don't. But I've got all sorts of instruments. So you can see some in the background, but I have Tibetan bowls, bells, crystal bowls, and tuning forks and all that stuff. And it's wonderful. But we have within us the greatest healing instrument, which doesn't require electricity. Batteries in the owner's manual is relatively easy to use. And what I like particularly about using the voice, and once again, I'm not even into using a really magnificent voice, once again, humming just because everybody can do it. But the idea is that, from my perspective, the most powerful and easiest way of projecting intentionality goes directly from our consciousness, our heart, comes out our throat, it arises on the breath. It is an embodiment of the breath vocalized, and it's our own sound. And you have to go through a couple of different layers when you're playing an instrument. Although instruments are really good, I don't think they're as good personally as the voice as a manifester for that energy. All right, Emily, sorry, thank you.
No, again, we're in alignment there. I agree. We all own a voice, and we all are able to create comforting sounds, whether we can comfort ourselves with our own vocal vibrations. And a lot of times that opens up so much emotion for so many people, because the ability to feel the vibration on your chest bones, in your resonators, right here in your face, that creates a holding kind of capsule in and of itself and reminds you that you are an energetic living body. And so I think that I love instruments, but a lot of times I get people who say, well, I could never play an instrument, or even holding a drum. Oh, I'm not a drummer. And, you know, people do say that about singing as well, because somewhere along the line, someone told them they weren't a singer. But everyone can learn at least how to create a pleasant tone that is pleasing to their own selves and able to heal.
Yeah.
And even if it's not aesthetically pleasing to them or to anyone else, that's not the point necessarily.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the point is allowing us to give voice to the emotions that we're holding on to, allowing us to free the energy that's within us in some way. And so it's this beautiful medium for expressing ourselves. And it doesn't have to sound traditionally good, you know, whatever good means to people. I don't believe that music or that sound has a moral judgment. So I hate the idea of you have a good voice, you have a bad voice, you have a voice, use it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a thought that I think, I mean, they're wonderful, but shows like The Voice or American Idol have added new terms into our consciousness. They sound pitchy. Everybody is so judgmental about their voice.
Right.
One of the reasons when we do humming is that, you know, taught harmonics, mantra chanting, X, Y, or Z. And then I come back a year later, you know, and we're not talking about people who want to like basically become singers or even open up their voice. We're talking about everyday people. I just want to give them a little glimmer of being able to experience it. And, you know, they don't do it oftentimes, not only because of the whole blocked throat area, but just because of the fact that they think that they have to be trained in this. I just want to bring up this as a point. It's so talking about, and we haven't covered it, and it's there, just in terms of the physiological benefits of self-created sound, whether it's a hum or an ah or an oh, but just a tone per se. And a lot of this is very true also from singing, but you get physiological benefits: increased oxygen in the cells, increased lymphatic circulation, lowered blood pressure and heart rate, increased levels of melatonin, which is great if you want to try to get some sleep, reduced levels of stress-related hormones like cortisol, so the cortisol goes down, release of endorphins, which were those wonderful self-created opiates that work as natural painkillers. You get the release of nitric oxide, particularly when you're humming, which is a vasodilator, and it's also an antiviral thing. So if somebody has sinusitis and they begin to hum, the nasal cavity is going to be generating nitric oxide. And then also, of course, you know this, but you get the release of oxytocin, which when people, you know, sing together, which is why we feel great. And last, just because you're mentioning the, you get increased heart rate variability. And basically, there are only seemingly two major ways that you can affect the vagus nerve. Yep. And Alfred Tomatis first talked about this many years ago. One is through deep breathing, and the other one seems to be through humming.
Right. Yep. We're accessing the vagus on several points. I mean, we are deep breathing. We are, you know, like when we breathe, when we find release and expansion in our bodies, we are stimulating the vagus at various points along the nerve. But then when we start singing, there's vibration happening, and the vagus innervates the larynx. So all of this, plus the intentional stuff, plus all of the thoughts, plus our ears, everything is involved. And vagus brings us out of fight or flight, you know? And so what a beautiful way to find peace within ourselves. Another thing that we talk about, and this wasn't in one of the questions, but I would love to sort of discuss this a bit, is we've noticed that so few people are aware of what's happening in their own bodies, they're so not aware of their emotional reactions to things. And so we have our students call to mind different events that bring them into an emotional state so that they can be aware of physical sensations that are associated with that emotional state. But when people are so focused on, like you were saying, Jonathan, on perfection, on pitchiness, on, you know, making sure everything is just right and being self-judgmental, they are focused like on things that don't allow them to experience themselves fully. And then when you're not aware of the transformations that happen within yourself when you're singing, you're less able to sort of harness those and to build your intention around those.
Yeah, yeah. No, this is so fascinating. We actually on this point of, does the voice act differently than an instrument? Actually, one of the students that we have in our class, she's quite, I guess she's quite an accomplished instrumentalist, multi-instrumentalist, and she said she always feels that she can be more expressive on an instrument than she can with her voice. She feels more impeded with her singing voice and much more free with her instruments. And I think she said she's been playing since she was a little kid.
Yeah.
And so, we said there's a quote, I want to say it was like Yehudi Menuhin maybe, who said that the only reason, we say this to our people all the time, the only reason to learn technique is to get the body out of the way of the soul. And so I told her, that just means that you've gotten, with your instruments, you've gotten your body out of the way of your soul more than you've gotten your voice out of the way of your soul yet. So we just need to, we need to keep working on that. But
I often say,
I think in either case, sorry, go ahead, Emily.
No. I was just going to jump on what you said, because I often say to my students, okay, now forget everything I told you and just sing it.
Yeah, right.
I often say that.
Yes, all the time. Jonathan, what were you gonna?
Oh, well, by gosh and by golly, I mean, this is just such an extraordinary thing. I wanted to just pull in a totally different topic, because sometimes, getting back to Tomatis, he basically differentiated between hearing and listening.
Yeah.
Hearing was passive, listening was active. And I think that it's really important when people work with sound that they get into the ability, because, in the yogic traditions, this thing called Shabd yoga, which is basically audible sound current yoga. And a lot of it has to do with listening to the inner sounds. And I just like to suggest that for anybody who is involved in making sound, you're not only listening to other people and to yourself, but really, when that happens, it changes everything. It's like enhancing your sensory output. And
yes.
So
when
Oh,
you talked about consciousness earlier, that your consciousness is essentially in the breath when you are being intentional. It moves out away from you. It is within you and you trace it, right? So you're present in your voice as it's going. The same is true of being a listener, that your consciousness really goes into the music and you allow yourself to fully be immersed by it, to fully be just present in what's happening each moment as it unfolds, rather than sort of listening passive or hearing passively, or kind of being aware of what's happening, but then you're thinking about something else while it's happening. Your presence is so important in that moment.
Right. This actually leads us perfectly into the next question, which is, is there a distinction to be made between passively absorbing music or sound and actively creating it? And I guess maybe we can add a third distinction of, are you absorbing it while you're thinking about something else? Or are you really actively listening, like you just mentioned? And there's a distinction there, but then is there a difference when you're creating the music or creating that sound yourself, when you are the one making the sounds?
how cool would it be if you could do both? Create it and also receive it. Don't know that I can, don't know that I can't. I've had those experiences. I bet you all have as well. And that's when you're really in the zone, huh?
Yeah, it's a meditation when that happens. I mean, it's always a meditation. It can always be a meditation, but the moments that you are in that place where you feel like you are so present in your sound, but you are receiving the love of the sound that's coming in from around you, it's such a beatific experience. And in the times that I've been honored enough to experience that, I leave the stage just feeling like a whole new person. It's really exquisite. Yeah. Emily, what are your thoughts? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jonathan.
If you think about the prayer of St. Francis, Lord, make me an instrument. It's like, if the sound is coming through us and not from us, what a blessing.
Yes. I tell my students all the time, you're not the driver of your voice, you're the tunnel. You're the tunnel that it passes through. You shape yourself and allow it to move through you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love
Excuse
that.
me, Emily, sorry.
No, it's
thank
all
you.
the, it's wonderful. Please. It's the same. And I grew up in church. And so it was always your body is your instrument from a more divine power. And you are to express that divine power, not necessarily what your mind can come up with. And so I think that's why singing is such a spiritual endeavor, even if you aren't subscribing to a certain religion, there is the
Mhm.
feeling that something is coming through me and I am just the vessel of the sound that is able to come out. And in those times, like you were talking about, Stephanie, I forget what happened and time goes so quickly.
Yeah.
And I know that it happened and I know that I did what I feel to be well, but after I couldn't tell you, it's almost like I wasn't present at all. It's that kind of,
Right.
you know, like looking above yourself kind of
Yeah.
feeling.
There's
Yeah.
no self-judgment. You stop
Yeah.
thinking and you just experience.
Right.
You stop thinking and you just feel.
Yeah.
And it's the most beautiful thing. It's so healing when that happens. I
Yeah.
love it. I
And
love it.
There's, something that I think artists of all kinds have talked about throughout the ages is the idea of your genius. And it has nothing to do with I am a genius. It's a genius is actually the root word for genius, and genie is the same thing. And so it's this like kind of your muse, essentially. It's like this kind of some sort of mystical spiritual being or energy or something that you can't really put your finger on, but it's coming from outside of your own consciousness, and you are just opening yourself for that to come through you.
Yeah.
And musicians and artists have talked about this for ages. There's a Tchaikovsky song that I teach sometimes. Mój geni, mój angiel, mój druk, my friend, my angel, my genius. And it's not like my, internally, my brain is super smart. It's I'm channeling something. I'm allowing for that flow of inspiration, of creativity to just come unimpeded through me.
Yeah.
And that's, being the mark of a true artist is kind of opening yourself completely to that and just letting it flow, I think.
Going back to something Jonathan mentioned, I always seem to bring this up because it is such a pop culture experience that everyone knows about. And it's the reality show television singing competitions. And, I see both sides of it, but mainly I tend to see the negative side of it, because once something like that is filmed, I can hear the auto-tune on the voices. And I can't get out of my ear the mechanic sound that is a tinny robot-like sound on top of what is a beautiful voice on its own. But because we have to just pitch it, a half step up for whatever reason to make sure it's perfect for the audience, I fear what the generation below all of us is going to start like feeling love for or try to idolize. And I don't love that.
We're missing the
Doesn't hit
point.
me. Yeah.
Absolutely. It misses the point. It misses the goal.
Even little kids shows, like we have our kids, for a while we're watching Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood, and all Daniel Tiger is auto-tuned when he sings.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick, the auto-tune, great thing. What's interesting about the auto-tune, when I say great topic, not a great thing, freaks me out. And a student of mine invented it, so that's besides the point. But did you ever hear harmonies that are auto-tuned? They're off. They're slightly compressed, so they make because when you sing together, you sing differently, naturally. The intervals that you create are different than the intervals that are machine created. Does this make any sense? It's a whole other topic. Whole number ratio is created harmonically by the voice naturally versus what is inputted into a, for the most part, auto-tune mostly is going to be working with equal temperament, which is different. It's a whole nother concept, but by gosh and by golly, it's huge because it is changing and then if you perceive it, then the actual effect, because maybe there's something sacred, emotional, and we can't codify it, but through a whole number ratio, a perfect fit that's actually there versus one that's slightly compressed to fit a mathematical form that is not right on there, it's going to affect us differently.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and voices are such dynamic instruments. There are so many overtones and so many unique little details about every single voice that auto-tune can't account for all of that. And so if it's trying to adjust fundamental pitch and we're losing sight of all of these overtones that separate out our voices, so we're missing it. We're missing the beauty and the sort of the magic that happens when you make music with someone else.
The organic quality of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can I ask a question, Jonathan? From a perspective of people being raised on autotune and hearing and being used to these certain tones, does that have the potential to kind of make you immune or not respond as well to other warmer tones? You know
Emily,
what I
I
mean?
don't know, but I can hear an auto tune up the yin yang, and it freaks me out. And I can't even use it on myself just to see,
No.
it doesn't happen. It sounds robotic. It sounds synthesized. It's a wonderful effect if you're using it for certain types of music, but to do that correct. And I'm thinking that sadly, all right, this is a whole another conversation or topic, but just for one of a better term, not only the quantification of music, but what's been happening in terms of everybody listening to MP3s on earbuds. And, that crushes the music, takes out a whole lot of the sound, and people may not know how to listen to music anymore. Here we are talking on Zoom, and we can't even make a tone together because Zoom right now is going to basically allow one of us to make a tone or basically silence both of. I mean, these are interesting times.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or just
absolutely.
telephones, telephones are designed to only give you what you need to understand speech. So they
Right.
block out the whole singer's
Right.
torment and everything.
Yeah.
So trying to record a real sound on a phone or through the phone or on a computer, you don't get the full picture.
And yet
Absolutely.
I'm going to suggest that, and I totally 100% know and agree, but I've also, and perhaps you have too, known that people who've either been able to teach over the phone or been able to actually project and use their voice over the phone. It's not the same, but somehow perhaps we are able, you get more and more into quantum physics and the realization that we're all enmeshed with each other. Perhaps somehow we're able to encode something that's besides or along with the sound on the phone or on a Zoom that is able to touch people. I don't know if you've ever tried to do even a silent meditation with somebody over this, and you can feel the energy. It's palpable.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we talk about empaths and things like that. I think probably a lot of us who are musicians are in touch with that. And I think that just means that we are a little bit, but that happens to me all the time. Actually, that happened to me about 10 minutes before this phone call or this Zoom call. I had an old student, and I couldn't get her off my mind this morning. And I sent her a text, and she said, I was writing you a text just now as you sent that. I've been thinking about you all day. And that happens, all the time. But you said something about the quantification of music. And another thing that I talk to my students about is the idea that if music were perfect, it would be math. That's not our goal here. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be human. It's supposed to be relatable. And humans are messy. Art should be messy. Art should be honest, and it should be vulnerable in ways that math can never be, because math is designed to be quantifiable. That can't exist if we intend to shift people's perspectives, if we intend to use our voices for self-discovery and for building empathy and compassion in the world. We can't do that if our goal is perfection.
Right.
Absolutely.
I'm going to throw out, I get hit by sometimes by stuff. Someone else I would like to bring to everyone's attention, just because he was a great teacher of mine, still is. His name is Dr. John Beaulieu, Bealieu. And his first book is Music and Sound and the Healing Arts. And that's it. And he's just a wondrous teacher who knows so much stuff. He was a music therapist at Bellevue. He was a naturopath, all this stuff. And he's there. He's a PhD and other things, and a wonderful teacher. And Tomatis, check his work out. Yeah. Just from the ears perspective, Dr. John Beaulieu, check his work out in terms of sacred ratios, in terms of singing, in terms of the elements, involved when you're making music, and what's the difference between a fire voice versus an earth voice and stuff like that. So there are a lot. I mean, you all have probably seen things just growing in terms of the field of sound and music as a healing therapeutic, and everybody's doing kirtans and whatnot. That's, you know, but if we can look back, there was some magnificent, has been some magnificent stuff happening in the 80s and 90s and whatever, because it seems like if something is, there's a fellow by the name of Don Campbell. Did anyone ever hear him? Yeah, dear friend. He introduced my wife and I, and his dear friend did the Mozart Effect. You ever hear about that?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, people don't know Don. He passed away maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and his work is almost null. And yet he was such a contributor in terms of basically enhancing people's awareness of how Mozart and different types of music could enhance learning, among other things. So, you know, investigate the past, folks. So we're standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak.
Yeah, no, actually, now that you said, I read the Mozart Effect a long time ago. I just didn't recognize the name. I got attached with it.
Yeah.
And so that actually, I thought about bringing that up with as far as the Mozart Effect, because there was a lot of, after that book was released, I remember there was kind of a lot of back and forth discussion about like, okay, well, is Mozart really that special about it, or does it really have anything to do with Mozart's music specifically? And it's really like Mozart was great, obviously, but music, I think what it really came down to is, because he talked about humming in the book quite a bit as a healing modality. It's about the intention and about the quality of the sound potentially. And Mozart wrote music that makes people feel great, but so did a lot of other people.
No, for sure. I mean,
so, I don't know.
One of Don's great books was actually, oh my goodness, I don't have one here, but there's a great book from the 1980s that's out of print by a guy named Dane Rudger called The Art of Tone and the Magic of Music. I'm trying to see if I can get it back in print, but it's like there, with Don's books, he had one called The Roar of Silence, all about tone and stuff like that. And I just mentioned him. I mentioned John Boyou because it's quite extraordinary. This we need to understand, because there are also a lot of myths currently occurring in the sound music field, and even in the quote science field. There's a fellow by the named Nikolai Tesla, who probably a lot of you have heard of. He is more misquoted things are attributed to him than anybody except Einstein. And so he didn't say a lot of these things, but if you try to research where these quotes come from, they are used so frequently on the internet that they're accepted as being true, but they're not. So it's kind of important to try to see where this stuff is coming from.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Well,
Oh man, I would love like 4 more hours with
I know.
both of you. This is brilliant. I keep on, I'm like, I want to talk about frequency specific microcurrent. I want to talk about just so many different things, but we're just.
Yeah, this has been so like mind-blowing conversation, but it's been already more than an hour, and I know you all have to go.
Just real quick, before I forget,
please.
I've just read this biography of Tesla, and he apparently first referred to electricity as electrified sound.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Oh my goodness. Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to, it's really, this is delving into the mystery of reality itself, of existence, of the whole cosmos at a fundamental level. That's what sound really is. Everything is made of vibrating energy. Vibration is sound. Whether we can hear it or not, our bandwidth of perception of audible sound is pretty narrow compared to what is actually happening out there.
I know, and to open a whole other can of worms, we talk about in various faiths having the word or having sound be sort of the thing that underlies everything. In the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was of God, and all of it's all vibration, it's all sound, and that's what we all are. That's what the whole universe is.
Right. Well, and that's cymatic. We talk about cymatics all the time, that cymatics is basically taking its physical form is the result of sound, of vibration. Some of it we can hear, some of it we can't, but it's all It's all there because of
Yeah.
vibration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you
What a
both.
blessing it is when all folks like you have discovered these things and are sharing it in such a way. It's such a pleasure and an honor to be sharing with you, to listen to you, to resonate with you all. You're doing great stuff. So much more thanks. It's been a real blessing to be able to do
Well,
this with
For
you.
us too.
The feeling is mutual.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.